Knoxville College embraced a diverse array of students. Regardless of class or social status, all were welcomed. During President McGranahan's tenure, the college grew exponentially. Land holdings skyrocketed from 22 acres to more than 100, including a farm, dairy, hospital, and church. Tuition was 50 cents and board $5.50 per month. The Aurora announced in October of 1901 that the school purchased the Seymour farm for $7,500. In a letter addressed to Dr. Witherspoon, Dr. McGranahan outlines part of his plans for developing the campus.
Dr. Witherspoon, the town surrounds us. The cedar grove that forms our magnificent view at the back of our place already has streets laid out in it and is being divided up and sold out in lots. The town of Lonsdale, a large suburb, is assuming large dimensions. Different parties have tried to purchase Mrs. Payne's place, but she gives us the first choice. She still offers it at the figure she stated years ago, $12,000. The property has advanced considerably since then, and there's no question about it being worth that much. It is a reasonable figure. It includes 4 lots that lie across from the road from her home and mine. In addition to the importance of getting it to enlarge our farm, it is perhaps more important that it will prevent streets from being laid out through our place. I have talked with Mrs. Payne and proposed to her the closing of the deal a year from January. I know she would very much prefer to have the money now, and I believe I could settle it at once. If this matter is as clear to you as it is to me, I should be glad if you could authorize me to do so. I could secure a $10,000 loan from one of the students who has money to lend at 5% interest. That may sound strange that we have students with so much means, but for once it is true.
A few weeks later, Mrs. Payne's creditors tried to coax her to terminate her deal with the college, but she kept her word. By the end of January 1904, the Payne property was in the hands of KC. In 1905, demand for boarding space at Knoxville College had grown so surprisingly that Elnathan Hall had to be renovated in order to shelter more students. When Elnathan was constructed in 1898, it was designed to accommodate add-ons, but this time, priority would be given to modernizing the toilet facilities.
The girls' toilets are absolutely awful. Our current facilities are quite primitive and unsanitary, might I add. By God, the boys who work in the kitchen have a bird's eye view of the girls. It is not private by any means. We can construct the toilet under the first floor of this new building. That way, it will only be accessible from the inside, and it will stay neat and clean. I have researched the matter of flushing toilets and learned that I could get one with 12 apartments made by the standard people of Pittsburgh for $145. That would suit our purpose perfectly. The toilets are automatic, flushing itself at such intervals as may be determined whether it be every 2, 3, or 6 hours.
The job cost an estimated $1,000. In 1891, Knoxville College entered into an arrangement with the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. UT would pay $2,800 annually for the salary of 2 professors, foremen, student labor, and some equipment. KC would provide the training for UT's black students. This was done to meet the conditions of the state's law of separate but equal facilities. By 1901, the appropriation increased to $4,000, and by 1903, it was as high as $6,000. The capital could not be used to purchase land or construct buildings, and it was to be spent exclusively in the industrial department. By 1904, the department included facilities for carpentry, blacksmithing, and other trades. It also added agriculture, including dairy, gardening, greenhouse work, and stock raising. The farm spanned 78 acres, including a herd of 18 cattle, silos, and a dynamo that provided electric lights. The campus brickyard allowed campus buildings to be revitalized at a cheap cost. Brick sidewalks were also placed around the school. Casey's students were so adept at creating quality bricks that they eventually signed a private contract for an order of 120,000 bricks. By 1904, Knoxville College students had sold 1 million bricks. The Jane Henry Place served as the school's lumberyard. The story of how the college came to own the property is fascinating. Jane P. Henry graduated from the KC Normal Department on July 12, 1884, and began teaching the 3rd grade in Chattooga County, Georgia. She returned to KC in 1895 and became a teacher in the training department. On September 9, 1879, she enrolled in the grad school and was an active member of the Witherspoon Literary Society. Her polished writing and oratory skills attracted the invitations of women's groups citywide. In a published letter, she wrote,
"When we entered school, little children from 5 to 6 years old were farther advanced than we were. This was very discouraging to us. But the old adage, 'Where there is a will, there's a way,' kept repeating itself in our ears. We are not a graduate, and perhaps never will be, but we are able to teach in the primary department of the college. We presume we will never be a graduate on the account of serious bodily infirmity. We have not been able to attend school for 2 years."
The infirmity that Jane Henry mentioned was a tumor that caused her eyesight to decline.
The blind girl, Jane. She is left with little resources upon which to depend, and a year ago at the church, our congregation arranged to pay for her boarding in the college department. The arrangement made her as happy as a bird. She is worthy in every way, as you know this, on the part of the congregation, and it does the congregation good, too. She owns a little farm of 63 acres about 14 miles from here. She's expressed a desire to leave this to the college and has taken steps to have the will made out.
After she bequeathed the property to the college, Casey agreed to care for her for the remainder of her life. 33 years later, September 1st, 1933, Miss Henry would take her final breath. 25 acres of the Henry property comprised valuable timberland. The remaining acreage was leased out at $20 a year to raise livestock feed. The boys from Knoxville College spent the summers working on the property. The agricultural department was so skilled at producing crops and dairy products that it not only provided food for the college, but it was able to sell many of the surplus goods in the city. Knoxville citizens were fascinated by the farm's abundance. They donated $1,000 for the construction of the new agriculture building, erected in 1905. The new structure held dairy rooms, a reading room, a museum, an office, and a basement. There was a time when the campus stirred with the insinuation that George Washington Carver himself might become the head of the KC Agriculture Department. Carver was an ex-slave who was sought out by Booker T. Washington to head the Agriculture Department at Tuskegee Institute. He became well known for his research and work with the peanut plant. In a letter dated November 22, 1904, President McGranahan wrote to Carter at Tuskegee.
Dear brother, your letter came Saturday night. The encouragement that you give me regarding the possibility of your coming is a real inspiration. I think you would find the climatic conditions here unexcelled. We have enough winter to make us relish the spring, but it is not too rigorous. Now, as to the questions you ask, the salary proposed was $1,200 for the calendar year, allowing 1 month of vacation. The board is not included, as we have found it more satisfactory to have the teachers pay their board out of their salary. The charge to teachers is only $6.35 a month for board, furnished room, heat, and light. If you decide, as I hope you would, that instead of a room you would need a house, the one I am living in would be available, and I would agree to rent it to you for $10 a month. If you should bring a wife with you and want to rent a house, the arrangements that we have concerning all the houses that we rent is that we keep the property outside in repair, but the tenant looks after any refittings. As to the work expected, I would want you to furnish the brains for the whole agricultural division of our work. We have the most competent foreman on the farm. I would endeavor to give you competent help so that along with student labor, you would be able to carry out your plans. We would counsel together about the best methods of developing and carrying out the work. You would be responsible directly to me and only me. As to teaching, that would depend altogether as to how much time you could devote to it. I would think that you might be able to teach 3 40-minute periods a day. Yes, we want to talk it over, and if you feel that you can consider it favorably, we must get together, anticipating an early and favorable reply.
On April 19, 1905, McGranahan mentions in a letter that Carver will be available sometime but could not leave now. There was no further reference to Dr. Carver in the official reports. In 1904, Dr. McGranahan petitioned Dr. Witherspoon to designate a portion of the Seymour farm to build a president's house. The board itself would have ownership of the property.
A friend of mine, rather friends, has promised the money for this purpose. It is the Junk family of Washington, Pennsylvania. Mrs. Fanny Junk McKee was the wife of a Presbyterian minister, and she was an old student of mine at Westminster. I would have preferred to have this applied to our debt for the land, but beneficiaries, like beggars, cannot dictate. They will give about $2,000 for it to be made, of course, of our brick. It is worth mentioning that this is a result of my trip to Jerusalem, as it grew out of a conversation with Mr. McKee, who was on the cruise.
The president's home was built and affectionately dubbed the Junk House. Eliza B. Wallace began her career at KC in 1877, performing double duty as the lady principal as well as teaching homemaking classes. She died on December 12, 1897. Wallace was deeply passionate about designing a facility where Black American women could receive nurses training. She left it in her will to create such a program for Knoxville College. 10 years would pass before her dream would come to fruition. Dr. McGranahan began laying the groundwork for the training school in 1903. He traveled the country, scouting the facilities of other college hospitals and seeking the expertise of seasoned physicians.
We have good colored physicians here in Knoxville who have agreed to give the required lectures and maintain oversight of the work free of charge. They're willing to do this in exchange for using the hospital as a sort of private practice for their patients. There will be no reason, as far as I can see, for any expense except the salary for the head nurse. The physicians with whom I have talked stoutly maintain that the income from the hospital will meet this expense, but I do not count on that. I had thought the Woman's Board would gladly assume it. If not, I can arrange to have it put under the industrial department, as it probably belongs there anyway. A hospital in connection with a school has fewer complications and better assured returns than a general one. There would be quite a little income from the treatment of our 250 students, as they might need it from time to time by our head nurse.
Many people do not realize that Black physicians had been practicing medicine in Knoxville since 1869. One of them, Dr. Wallace W. Derrick, recognized his patients' need for hospital care. In 1896, he built 3 cottage-type healthcare facilities in different sections of the city, though they could hardly be considered hospitals. When the Knoxville General Hospital was constructed in 1902, Black patients were restricted to the basement, with room for 15 people at most. Blacks were also not permitted to practice medicine there. For most Black physicians, the KC Hospital would be their first chance to practice in a bona fide environment. On July 28, 1904, Dr. McGranahan received a letter from Eliza Wallace's brother. In the letter, it stated that there was a setback in the settlement of her estate. McGranahan asked the board to reassure him that the $3,000 from the estate would be used for the construction of a hospital. He penned a letter to Dr. Brown Ayers, president of the University of Tennessee.
I have a bequest for something over $3,000 with which to erect a nurse training hospital. We will get the building up this summer and plan to have it ready for use by the 1st of 1907. I have some assurances for some money with which to equip it and hope to take up this very important line of work in a way that will give girls who wish to learn nurse training the very best equipment. I believe that we will not have a more important industry on our hill than this one.
He offered the position of hospital superintendent to Miss Eva Renwick.
The superintendent will have entire control and supervision of the hospital and nurses. We cannot tell how many nurses will be under her this year, but we will limit the number to something like 8 or 10. We will have both white and colored physicians to lecture to the nurse students, and it will be patronized by physicians of both races in putting patients in the hospital. I have decided to offer the place to you, if you will accept. The salary is $600 a year, and of course a month's vacation would be given. The board has left us the filling of the place, so there is no red tape to go through about it. Let me hear from you soon.
By November 28th, Miss Renwick had accepted the position. The ceremonial opening of the Eliza B. Wallace Memorial Hospital took place February 22, 1907. The building was 2 stories, measuring 49 by 34 feet, and had 6 private rooms, 2 wards, an operating room, a dispensary, a waiting room, office, and an elevator. Students who were admitted were charged 40 cents per day in addition to their regular board. Patients from outside of the college were welcomed to the wards for $5.50 per week. The charges did not include medication or doctor's fees. Potential nursing students had to be between 20 and 40 years of age. They had to be of both good moral character and physically fit. Once accepted into the program, they paid an incident fee of $1.50 and served a 2-month probationary period. At the end of probation, they were required to purchase their uniforms. In the course of the first 11 months of operation, 74 patients were treated. 50 of those were major surgical operations. The first Black American to ever be accepted as a Red Cross nurse, Frances Fannie Elliott Davis, received her early training at the KC Hospital. The hospital was essential to increasing the number of Black physicians in Knoxville from 7 in 1907 to 20 by 1926. The hospital closed in 1926. It would be another 15 years before Black medical professionals could practice at the Knoxville General Hospital in 1941. Another milestone of Dr. McGranahan's presidency was the erection of the Carnegie Library and Macmillan Chapel. The library was dedicated on May 18, 1909. It was a 2-story structure with 4 classrooms on the ground floor. The upper floor was accessible by a high stairwell made of brick and concrete. It contained about 3,000 volumes, the standard magazines, and many newspapers. It was built through a $10,000 gift from Andrew Carnegie and the sweat from the brow of KC students. The cornerstone for Macmillan Chapel was laid on June 9, 1913. This was made possible by the Second United Presbyterian Church, north side of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They donated $8,450 in honor of their late pastor, the Reverend W.H. Macmillan. Macmillan served on the Freedmen's Board for 21 years. The chapel was completed by the Industrial Department, and the plans were inked by William Thomas Jones, a Normal Department graduate from the class of 1909. Musical acts and notable speakers were hosted regularly at the chapel. George Washington Carver addressed a crowd in 1924 and 1931. Historian and founder of Negro History Week, Carter G. Woodson, graced the platform in 1924. James Weldon Johnson in 1926. County Cullen in 1932. Mary McLeod Bethune in 1935. And W.E.B. Du Bois in 1935. The assembly was attending a 1-act play in the chapel when a huge commotion interrupted the production.
Hey, is that Jesse?
Dressed in a fancy blue English draped suit,
Hey, look, y'all, it's Jesse.
he was brought to the university by one of his friends, who was the head of the mathematics department, Professor G.D. Kyle. The rafters rumbled from the vibrations of the mighty ovation.
Thank you all. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today, although I did not mean to interrupt the play.
That's all right. Go ahead, Jesse. Talk that talk, champ.
The buckeye bullet expressed his joy in seeing the stars and stripes raised above the flags of all other nations.
Leading a band is all right financially, and it's a lot of fun. But socially, it's no good. As for me, I'm going to try to go back to school next year, finish my education, and become something worthwhile for my race.
Speak, brother.
Crowds of students gathered around to get the autograph of Jesse Owens, the world's fastest man, before he was whisked away in an automobile.